This overview is an introduction to the new Massachusetts Evaluation Framework. It is the first of 6 training modules that will take you through each step of the evaluation cycle, from unpacking the new performance rubrics to setting SMART goals and developing educator plans, to gather evidence and conducting observations as well as feedback. By the end, you will have a clear understanding of the new education evaluation framework, including the ratings educators will receive, the new standards and rubric, 5-step cycle, and different educator plans. Before jumping into key components of the new evaluation framework, it's important to pause and understand how we got here. In August 2010, thanks to the partnerships with over 235 districts and charter schools throughout the Commonwealth, Massachusetts received a $250 million Race to the Top grant and embarked on a multi-year effort to improve its system of public education. The 40-member task force met regularly for 7 months and submitted its recommendations to the Commissioner in March of 2011. These recommendations would provide the foundation for the new regulations governing education evaluation throughout the Commonwealth, which the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education passed in June 2011. What are the priorities of the new framework? First and foremost, this new framework places student learning at the center of the process by focusing on the evaluation and development of educators. Equally central to this process is its focus on promoting the growth and development of educators, from district and school-level administrators to instructional support personnel and classroom teachers. Everyone will receive feedback and opportunities that support continuous growth and improvement through collaboration. The new evaluation framework also requires recognition of truly excellent practice by encouraging districts to reward success in teacher and leadership. Equally important, the new framework sets a high bar for tenure by requiring new teachers to demonstrate proficiency in all standards of effective practice within 3 years to earn professional teacher status. Finally, the new framework shortened timelines for improvement, where educators who are not rated proficient face accelerated timelines for improvement. Together, these priorities embody a common set of principles and expectations for all educators in schools and districts across the Commonwealth. Please take a minute to review the key components of the new evaluation framework. As a result of this new evaluation framework, everyone will eventually earn 2 ratings. A summative performance rating, shown here on the left, of either exemplary, proficient, needs improvement, or unsatisfactory, and an impact rating on student performance, shown here on the right, of either high, moderate, or low. One critical point about these ratings sets Massachusetts apart from many other states. These ratings are separate. One does not change the other. Your impact on student performance will either raise nor lower your summative performance rating. Another important aspect to consider is the time frame for the student impact rating, which doesn't go into effect until the 2014-15 school year. First, let's dive into the summative rating more closely so you have a better idea of what it represents and how it impacts educator practice. Let's start with the summative performance rating. This rating reflects an assessment of an educator's professional practice as well as progress the educator makes towards his or her goals. Starting in 2012-2013 school year, everyone, including evaluators, will receive a summative rating of exemplary, proficient, needs improvement, or unsatisfactory. There are 3 types of evidence that inform the summative rating. The first includes multiple measures of student learning, growth, and achievement. This type of evidence is used to gauge progress of an educator's student learning goal and can include everything from student work to benchmark assessments to performance measures. The second type of evidence includes products of educator practice. This includes artifacts such as lesson plans, as well as observations conducted throughout the year. Finally, starting in 2013-2014 school year, the summative rating will incorporate additional evidence related to the student and staff survey feedback. Based on the collection of evidence related to the educator practice, evaluators will issue one of four ratings: unsatisfactory, needs improvement, proficient, and exemplary. The majority of districts throughout Massachusetts have utilized 3 or even 2-point scales. When evaluating teachers and administrators, where most educators were simply rated meets expectations, not only does this type of scale lack transparency, it fails to provide anyone, whether we're talking about teachers, principals, or superintendents, with critical information and feedback needed to learn and grow in their profession. In this 4-point scale, proficient practice is defined as rigorous but attainable, the expected level of performance for educators. The proficient level of performance will likely capture most of the educators throughout the Commonwealth, while reserving exemplary ratings for the truly exceptional individuals whose practice can serve as a model for others. Few educators, administrators included, are expected to demonstrate exemplary performance on more than a small number of standards. The new evaluation framework in Massachusetts will, for the first time, hold all educators in similar roles to common standards of practice. As you can see, there are 4 standards of practice for administrator leaders and 4 standards of practice for teachers and specialized instruction support providers, such as school counselors, psychologists, nurses, and others. Take a look at standards number 3 and 4, which are parallel for both administrators and teachers. This underscores the similarities across all educators with regard to practices and responsibilities around family and community engagement, as well as professional culture, similarities that underscore the extent to which all educators are working towards similar goals in a school and district. Educators will be rated on each of the 4 standards, and those ratings will inform their overall summative rating. With that in mind, I'd like to draw your attention to the 3 standards with asterisks. The task force felt that these 3 standards were the most important components of effective educator practice. In fact, an educator must be rated proficient on these standards in order to receive an overall summative rating of proficient. For example, if a teacher were to be rated proficient on standards 1, 3, and 4, yet rated needs improvement on standard 2, teaching all students, the highest overall summative rating they could receive would be needs improvement until they improved their performance in standard 2. Similarly, an administrator must be rated proficient on standard 1, instructional leadership, in order to receive an overall summative rating of proficient or higher. Also, it is important to note that all provisional educators must earn a proficient rating on each standard in order to earn professional teacher status. The 4 standards take shape and find meaning in a performance rubric. Here you can see a map of the teacher rubric. The 4 standards for teacher practice are listed across the top row. Each standard is then broken down into 3 to 6 indicators. For example, Standard 1, Curriculum, Planning and Assessment, has 3 corresponding indicators: Curriculum and Planning, Assessment and Analysis. Both the standards and indicators are defined specifically in the regulations and represent the aspects of practice on which each educator will be evaluated. As part of the model system, ESE developed performance rubrics that incorporate the 4 standards of practice and each corresponding indicator in order to further define what effective practice associated with each indicator looks like. The model system teacher rubric, which you see here, breaks the indicators down further into specific, concrete elements of practice. So, for example, under Standard 2, Teaching All Students, and Indicator B, Learning Environment, the Model System Teacher rubric identifies three elements associated with effective practice: safe learning environment, collaborative learning environment, and student motivation. The remaining 15 indicators throughout the rubric are similarly broken down into concrete, targeted elements of practice that will help guide the work of every teacher in a similar direction. Keep in mind, educators only receive ratings for each of the four standards, not on every indicator or element. The indicators and elements are there to define and make transparent and expected practice for each standard. In total, ESE has developed 4 performance rubrics: a rubric for district-level administrators, a rubric for school-level administrators, a classroom teacher rubric, and a rubric for specialized instructional support personnel, such as a guidance counselor, school psychologists, and school nurses. They all follow the same structure with 4 standards of practice and related indicators. The 4 rubrics themselves are very similar to one another. They identify common practices across roles and identify responsibilities of administrators that are necessary in order for teachers to meet their standard of practice. There will be cases, however, where an educator's role is different enough that the rubric doesn't sufficiently capture their unique responsibilities. Think of a school nurse, a business administrator, or a school psychologist, for example. In cases like this, districts are encouraged to work with that educator or group of educators to develop 1 or 2 specific indicators that will augment or supplement an existing rubric. The Specialized Instructional Support Personnel rubric was designed specifically to accommodate additional role-specific indicators for school-level educators in unique roles such as this. In sum, ratings on the standards of practice is articulated throughout a performance rubric, plus an assessment of progress towards educator goals over the course of an educator's plan, lead to summative performance rating. Now let's look at what the summative performance rating means for an educator. The summative rating determines the type of plan an educator will be on. As you see here, educators that are rated proficient or exemplary, the top 2 rows of this matrix, will be on self-directed growth plans. If an educator is rated needs improvement, they will need to be on a directive growth plan, which simply means that their goals are focused in the area in need of improvement. Educators that receive a summative rating of unsatisfactory are on improvement plans, which require more intensive support. Finally, you can see at the bottom of this matrix is something called a developing educator plan. This plan is independent of the summative rating and designed to support and develop new teachers and administrators during the first 3 years on the job. The 4 plans are designed to accommodate an educator's experience level, as well as their ratings on the last evaluation cycle. These plans differ in 2 ways: their duration. A plan could be as long as 2 school years or as short as 30 days, and the degree of autonomy allotted to the educator. The intent is to provide each educator with the opportunity to improve their practice in a manner that meets their specific needs. Developing educator plans are for educators that are new to specific roles. This includes non-PTS teachers in the first 3 years of the profession, as well as administrator in the first 3 years in a district. This plan can be 1 school year or less in duration. The next 3 plans are for experienced educators. The self-directed growth plan is for educators who were rated proficient or exemplary on their last evaluation and can be 1 or 2 years in length. A directed growth plan is for educators rated needs improvement on their last evaluation and can be 1 school year or less in duration. The purpose of the directive growth plan is to focus on that particular area in which they need to improve so they can achieve an overall rating of proficient once more and move back into a self-directed plan.
An educator can only remain on a directed growth plan for one cycle. If they do not receive a rating of proficient or higher at the conclusion of that cycle, they would be rated unsatisfactory and transition to an improvement plan. Finally, as just mentioned, educators rated unsatisfactory are placed on an improvement plan, which can be anywhere from 30 calendar days in length up to 1 school year. The improvement plan stipulates the educator's professional practice and student learning goals and identifies the appropriate action steps and professional development required to address those goals. As districts transition to the new education evaluation system, each district will determine the most appropriate starting plan for each educator. Every educator is going to receive a rating of impact on student learning, growth, and achievement of high, moderate, or low. The regulations require that the impact rating be based on trends and patterns in student learning. Trends are result-based on at least 2 years of data, and patterns are defined as consistent results from multiple measures. Bottom line, every educator will need at least 2 years of data from multiple sources to inform an impact rating. Data can come from a variety of sources. Statewide growth measures such as MCAS, student growth percentiles, or access scores must be taken into account when applicable. But as many of you know, only a fraction of educators work with students who take these tests. Therefore, other measures of student learning will inform the impact rating, including district-determined measures that are comparable across grade levels and subjects. You've seen how the summative rating determines which of the 4 plans an experienced educator will follow. We've now added in the impact rating to this matrix. An educator's impact rating remains completely separate from their summative rating and does not change the summative rating. What it does do is determine the length of the plan and the nature of an educator's goal. For educators whose impact on student learning is low, the educator plan shall be no more than 1 school year in length and shall include 1 or more goals related to student learning developed on the basis of an analysis of the educator's professional practice. For example, if you are an experienced educator with a summative rating of proficient or exemplary and an impact rating of medium or high, you will be on a 2-year self-directed growth plan. If your impact rating is low, your plan will be on a 1 year in length, with 1 or more of your goals focusing on the area of the student learning that stands out as in need of additional attention. This outcome is specifically designed to allow the educator and evaluator to focus on the discrepancy between proficient and exemplary practice, and low student growth, driving home the principle that student learning remains the focus of the educator's practice. For educators on district growth or improvement plans, which are already 1 school year or less in duration, an impact rating of low in conjunction with the analysis of their professional practice needs simply helps to determine the focus of their goals. In sum, the impact rating and the student results on the district or state measures that inform it are explicitly designed to prompt focused self-assessment, collaborative inquiry, conversation, and action, resulting in targeted professional growth or development plans and goals that lead to improvement. The impact rating is a signal device for further investigation, not a dispositive judgment on performance. All that said, it's important to know that the impact rating isn't going into effect for several years. As defined, an impact rating requires student data for multiple measures across at least 2 years. Districts with Level 4 schools will start identifying such measures during the 2012-2013 school year and administering them in 2013-2014. Race to the top and non-race to the top districts follow this pattern 1 year later. For most educators, 2 years of collecting data will mean that the first student impact ratings will not be made until the end of the 2014-15 or 2015-16 school years. This is the 5-step evaluation cycle that drives every educator's plan. The 5-step cycle is designed to ensure that the educator is an active participant throughout his or her evaluation and is driving the very process forward. Each step is designed to capitalize on collaboration and promote continuous learning. The purpose of the self-assessment is twofold. It actively engages the educator in launching his or her own evaluation and prepares the educator to propose rigorous, targeted goals. The self-assessment process has three parts: analyzing student learning needs, identifying professional practice needs related to the four standards of practice, and thinking about goals related to these two areas. After completing the self-assessment, educators move to step 2, analysis, goal setting, and plan development. At this point, educators set at least 2 goals. These goals should be SMART, specific, measurable, and attainable. When done well, the educator's goals will lead directly to the development of each educator's plan, a plan that will describe exactly what the educator and evaluator will do over the course of the evaluation cycle to meet the proposed goals. Of the 2 goals, one must be a student learning goal related to the achievement or growth of students for whom the educator is responsible. The other goal must be a professional practice goal that is aligned with the standards and indicators in the rubric. The nature of both goals should come directly from the self-assessment, as well as what was learned in the prior evaluation cycles. Educators must also consider team goals. Team goals are common goals. They may set with a grade level or subject area team at their school and can be a very effective way for groups of similarly situated educators to work together on common objectives, whether they're related to a new initiative like the implementation of the revised Massachusetts curriculum frameworks or targeted to a school-wide goal such as decreasing the achievement gap or better supporting English language learners. When you add key action steps and benchmarks to a SMART goal in order to track and measure progress, you elevate the goal to a concrete action plan. Key action steps should be tightly linked to realistic attainment of the goal. Process benchmarks should be identified to track progress, and outcome benchmarks represent the desired results. This is what we mean by making a goal smarter, and this is what defines the details, the action steps and necessary supports and professional development for everyone's educator plan. Step 3. Implementation of the plan is the heart of the 5-step cycle, during which point everyone completes the action steps outlined in their plan. The educator gathers evidence around his or her practice with specific focus on his or her goals, while evaluators conduct frequent observations and engage in ongoing dialogue with educators around practice and student learning. The new framework purposefully identifies several types of evidence that inform an evaluation in order to ensure a comprehensive picture of practice for each educator. Evidence can and should include everything from student learning data to various artifacts to observational evidence, all of which should be related directly to the educator's goals or focused aspects of practice, and prompt feedback and dialogue about instruction. The collection of evidence must be seen as an opportunity to select a sample of high-quality artifacts and other data that fairly represents performance and impact. It is not intended to be a record of all that the educator has done in a year. It's important that there be sufficient evidence associated with each standard, such that an evaluator can make an informal judgment related to practice under that standard. That said, the preponderance of evidence should focus on the educator's goals, high priority elements, and any critical school priorities not addressed by the professional practice and student learning goals. Evidence should never be manufactured or created for the sake of evaluation, but rather reflect a sample of the day-to-day work an educator completes. School leaders can also identify common artifacts for which all educators are responsible, artifacts that represent evidence of school-wide goals or objectives when relevant. There is no set number of artifacts required to be submitted, and in fact, the number of artifacts to collect will vary by educator depending on their goals and the action steps in their plan. Whether an educator identifies 8, 10, or even 12 artifacts, the key is to ensure a balanced representation of performance. Observations represent one of several sources for evidence, and they play a critical formative role in promoting professional growth and development. Through the use of short, frequent observations rather than one or two formal observations, evaluators have the opportunity to provide targeted, ongoing feedback to educators and maintain a dialogue around teaching and learning. Research shows that this type of targeted, ongoing feedback about instruction has the most potential to change and improve practice. The regulations define proficient practice with regard to evaluation as including frequent, unannounced visits to a classroom, followed by targeted and constructive feedback to teachers. This underscores the importance of moving beyond the typical announced observation to an approach that is more sustained, targeted, and constructive. The ESE model system recommends frequent, brief, unannounced observations for all educators, while maintaining at least one announced observation for new teachers or educators who are struggling. For Step 4, the educator submits his or her collected data to the evaluator in advance of their conversation, and the evaluator looks at all the evidence collected to date and provides feedback to the educator to help him or her improve professional practice. For educators on plan that is 1 year or less in length, the formative assessment serves as a critical check-in regarding progress on goals and/or performance standards. For educators on a 2-year plan, the formative evaluation takes place at the end of the first school year. In addition to checking progress on goals, the formative evaluation in 2-year plans results in ratings on each of the 4 standards, as well as an overall summative rating. However, these ratings are assumed to be the same as the previous summative rating, unless evidence demonstrates a significant change in performance, in which case the rating on performance standards may change. Finally, at the end of the cycle, everyone has a summative evaluation. The summative evaluation is the point at which the evaluator gathers all of the evidence together, the artifacts, observation notes, and measures of student learning related to the educator's goals, and develops ratings based on this comprehensive picture of practice. Every educator will earn a rating of each of the 4 standards, as well as an overall summative rating that takes into account progress of his or her goals. This visual captures the 5-step cycle for teachers in linear form, rather than circular form. The linear graphic provides a different way to look at this process, with the 5 steps of the cycle spread out across the top of the page, and the components of each steps listed below. You'll see in this 1-year cycle, everyone conducts their self-assessment in September and moves through Step 2, goal setting and plan development, by the end of October. The formative assessment takes place in the middle of the year, usually in January or February, so the evaluator can touch base with the educator and check in on the progress towards their goals. The cycle concludes in May or June with the summative evaluation. For educators on a 2-year plan, the 2 main differences are the length of Step 3, implementation of the plan, which extends over a period of 2 school years, and the timing of Step 4, the formative evaluation, which takes place at the end of the first year in June. For 2-year cycles, Step 4 is called formative evaluation rather than a formative assessment, because the evaluator actually rates an educator's performance on each standard and provides an overall summative performance rating. Remember, this formative evaluation rating is presumed to be the same as the prior ratings unless there is evidence of a significant change in performance. That means that for the vast majority of educators on 2-year plans, the formative evaluation at the end of year 1 still acts as a mid-cycle check-in focused on progress on goals. Together, This 5-step cycle drives continuous learning for all educators. At the conclusion of each cycle, all the conversations, analysis, and experience that inform the summative evaluation provide the foundation for the next self-assessment, creating a continuous cycle of improvement that will improve teaching and learning throughout the school. Before coming to a close, let's return to those 5 priorities outlined by the task force and place them in context of what we now know. How does the new framework place student learning at the center? Multiple measures of student performance inform both the summative rating through the inclusion of student learning goals and the student impact rating, which require trends and patterns of student outcomes. How does the framework promote the growth and development of educators? In addition to a new set of rigorous standards and indicators for everyone, the 5-step cycle places the educator in the driver's seat and requires continual collaboration and communication around practice throughout the process. The new evaluation framework actually requires recognition of truly excellent practice, as demonstrated by those educators receiving exemplary ratings. Districts are encouraged to find unique and innovative ways to reward success in teaching and leadership. With regard to setting a higher bar for tenure, the new evaluation framework requires new teachers to be proficient in all 4 standards of effective practice in order to receive professional teacher status. Finally, the new framework shortens timelines for improvement by defining educator plans of shorter duration for those educators who are struggling, allowing supervisors the ability to focus resource more efficiently on those educators and accelerating the timeline for improvement. Together, these priorities embody a common set of principles and expectations for all educators in school and districts across the Commonwealth.